Mr. Chairman, if I could, if Dr. Collins could comment, we had a great hearing on Alzheimer's.
Yes.
And also, that's an epidemic in our country, as is autism, quite frankly. And again, many here could comment on it. And then there's those things that seem benign and not too scary, but then along comes flu. But when we look at the A words alone, autism and all, there was talk of like, do we need like a Manhattan Project? And I wonder to Dr. Collins and the esteemed panel, what is the best thing for NIH? Sustained, steady growth with kind of an agreement across the aisle and across the dome of steady increases to the way we had the concept of, I understand if we kept pace with inflation at 3%, and then another 5%, we could get to almost doubling NIH, we don't want to use that phrase anymore, to $40 billion. Is that better rather than a concentrated big buck expenditure on one particular area for?
I really appreciate the question, and I wanted to show you a graph.
In other words, does the idea of a Manhattan-like project really have efficacy, or is it sound good, but?
What you see on the screen here is the projection over the past year since 1990 of the NIH support, corrected for inflation, because we have to deal with that. That's the yellow line. You see the blue bars there for the Recovery Act, those 2 years of an increment, which helped with sort of pent-up need. But notice the doubling, which happened there between 98 and 2003, then encountered essentially flat budgets, which inflation has eroded ever since. And you can see, interestingly, the dotted line is the trajectory we were on before the doubling, which if you go back to 1970, we were on a period of about 3.7% annual growth. If we had stayed on that steady trajectory, we would now be $10 billion almost higher than we are. Very interesting to sort of contemplate this. Now, the doubling was wonderful. The doubling did huge things for biomedical research, but what came after has been really quite painful. And to answer Senator Mikulski's question, the worst thing you can do, I think, to biomedical research is to create an area of uncertainty, of ups and downs, of a roller coaster. Science operates not as a sprint, but a marathon. You need confidence that there's going to be support there so that young scientists can tackle really innovative, risky projects. And this up and down circumstance, now hitting historic lows in terms of opportunities to get support, is really quite damaging. And what would be vastly better, Senator, would be for us to be able to count on a more or less stable trajectory of inflation plus some percentage that you could be fairly confident was going to be maintained. I understand how hard that is in the current fiscal situation, but if you're asking my judgment about what NIH needs in order to flourish, and in order to contribute to this nation what we think we can contribute into the world, that would be it, that kind of steady trajectory that you could be confident in.
I just want to say to you and to all the institute directors and everyone who works at NIH, we're fortunate to have you. But again, I'm going to come back to your longevity, which shows really your dedication, and we view it as a blessing. I also want to just comment that many of us here are worried about the innovation deficit, both at NIH and in others. There's an effort that's being led by Senator Durbin in this area, and to that end, we on the Appropriations Committee are going to hold a full committee hearing on innovation to make sure that budget cuts and possibilities of future sequester does not dampen our standing as a world innovation leader. Yes, we worry about the deficit, but we also worry about the innovation deficit. So we are going to be holding that hearing on April 29th. Dr. Collins will be testifying, the science advisor, we're going to be listening to NSF, DARPA, and also the energy secretary. So we'll be doing that. In the short time I have, because others are now here, I want to raise the issue of the Office of Women's Health, that which I referenced earlier. It has been flat funded for 3 years at $40 million. Now, what I'd like to get a picture of is, what do you need to have the Office of Women's Health? Number two, kind of the way we're thinking about running it, because each and every one of those institutes does important work with women. So when we embarked upon our initial endeavor that I referenced with Dr. Healy, breast cancer was our preoccupation. Those rates are coming down, but lung cancer in women is high. Dr. Gibbons could tell me that one of the women are now, with heart disease, are now escalating and their symptoms are different, but an early diagnosis. There. We could go to Dr. Landis and we think about something like atrial fib that's there, but if you don't take your blood thinner, you could end up with a stroke and wondering, where are you, et cetera. And then, of course, autoimmune is several things, one of which is lupus, for which only recently the first therapeutic drug in 50 years, of course, came out of Human Genome in Maryland, a company. So it's across all the institutes, which was the idea why we never wanted an institute on women. We wanted an office that would work. So could you tell us, really, with the 40 million, how's it going? Do you need more? And then how do you see this working across the institutes?
Thanks for the question. I very much resonate with what you're saying, and we have made a lot of progress, Senator. Thanks to you and others for raising this issue to the attention of NIH 20 years ago. We've been fortunate in the Office of Research on Women's Health to have remarkable leaders in Vivian Pinn, who recently retired, and now Janine Clayton, who is a terrific leader for that effort, who I just met with a day before yesterday to go over the status of her portfolio. And she has been, as Vivian was, very effective in building partnerships across NIH to support special efforts that focus on women's health. There are particular programs in ORWH, particularly the Specialized Centers of Research on Sex Differences, the SCORE programs, as well as training programs that have done a good job, I think, in increasing both research on women's health and also increasing the proportion of researchers who are women. And I would say, if you look at the statistics, it looks reasonably good, but there are obviously things that we need to do better. In FY13, 57% of those enrolled in NIH clinical research trials were women, 57%. And you know what that was 20 years ago. In phase 3 trials, 73%. So we've really come a long way. Many of those trials are, of course, disease-specific and may therefore be sex-specific, as for instance in breast cancer. But many of them, as in heart disease, are balanced. What we are currently particularly concerned about is actually that this same idea has not trickled down in animal models. And there's clearly a problem, and that many of the investigators who are studying animal models of disease are studying only males, male rats, male mice, for reasons that are not defensible. And Dr. Clayton and I are about to publish an exhortation to the community about this, and we are going to start looking very closely at grants to see whether this can be corrected. Because if you didn't learn about those sex differences in your preclinical, you're going to miss out on an inference that might be really important. So how much money do we need? Well, we need more money, as you've heard from all of us, in every area of what we're doing. I would say Dr. Clayton has been quite effective in brokering the dollars that her office has to build relationships and get a lot done. But there's a lot more we could be doing.
Well, as you know, the health data on women are changing. And the recent IOM report over the last 2 years shows that mortality and morbidity among women is on the rise. Anyway, a longer topic.
I would love to converse further with you about this at any time. It's a passion of mine as well.
Thank you.